2017.
The French Special Forces veteran, who had never been submitted in his entire professional career, went unconscious on the canvas, face down, choked out cold by Paddy Pimblett.
And then you rolled with it. He tried to get out of it, you rolled with it again.
That was all it took. Inside T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, during one of the biggest UFC cards in recent memory, Benoît Saint Denis, the God of War, experienced the most shocking moment of his career. Benoît Saint Denis isn't just another fighter. He's one of the toughest men in mixed martial arts. A former French Special Forces operator who began training MMA in 2017 after years of military service. The man had never been submitted in his professional career. Not once. Yet, in front of a packed arena, he was choked unconscious by Paddy Pimblett, collapsing face first on the canvas. Even after trying to escape the submission, Paddy stayed attached, rolled with every movement, maintained relentless pressure, and finished the choke. The MMA world is still trying to process what happened. And what unfolded immediately after the fight makes the story even more unbelievable. Let's break it all down. Before we talk about what happened inside the octagon, you need to understand exactly who Benoît Saint Denis is. This wasn't an unknown fighter getting finished. This was one of the most feared competitors in the UFC lightweight division. Many fans considered him one of the most violent fighters in the sport. Born on December 18, 1995, Benoît Saint Denis is a French professional mixed martial artist and former French Army Special Forces soldier who competes in the UFC lightweight division. But calling him a soldier barely tells the full story. Before beginning his MMA career, Saint Denis served with the 1st Marine Infantry Parachute Regiment, one of France's elite Special Forces units. He also served as a Special Air Service operator during missions in Mali. This is a man who has operated in active war zones. A man who experienced real combat before the age of 21. After leaving the military, he chose another battlefield, the UFC octagon. Saint Denis began training judo at 8 years old and eventually earned his black belt. When his military contract ended, he committed himself completely to professional MMA in early 2019. He gave himself 2 years to reach the UFC. 2 years was all the money he had saved to train full-time and chase his dream. He accomplished exactly that. After signing with the UFC and moving to lightweight, he began destroying nearly everyone placed in front of him. Every victory came the same way. Saint Denis overwhelmed opponents with non-stop pressure until he found the finish, refusing to slow down even while absorbing heavy counter shots. He quickly earned a reputation as one of the sport's most relentless finishers. He dominated the regional circuit before making his mark inside the UFC lightweight division. Every one of his 17 professional victories came by finish. 6 knockouts. 11 submissions. A perfect 100% finishing rate. Nobody survived the distance against BSD. That became his identity. That became his reputation. And before last night, nobody had ever submitted him. Not once during his professional career. Think about how incredible that really is. Here's why this defeat hit so hard. It came after one of the strongest runs of Benoît Saint Denis' career. Following a difficult 2024 that included losses to Dustin Poirier and Renato Moicano, the God of War returned stronger than ever. At UFC Paris on September 6, 2025, Saint Denis faced Mauricio Ruffi in the co-main event. He secured a second-round submission victory and earned another performance of the night bonus in front of his hometown fans. The atmosphere was electric. Then came November 2025. Saint Denis faced Beneil Dariush at UFC 322. During the weigh-ins, Dariush missed weight and surrendered 25% of his purse to Saint Denis. Inside the cage, the fight barely lasted. Saint Denis knocked him out just 16 seconds into the opening round, collecting another performance of the night bonus. 16 seconds. One clean attack. One devastating finish. He walked into Madison Square Garden and ended the fight almost instantly. Next came Dan Hooker in the co-main event of UFC 325 on February 1, 2026. Saint Denis stopped him by technical knockout in the second round. 4 straight finishes. 4 straight performance of the night bonuses. By early 2026, he had climbed to number 5 in the UFC lightweight rankings. A title shot no longer felt like a dream. It felt inevitable. Then UFC 329 was announced. Paddy Pimblett. Co-main event. Las Vegas. One of the biggest fight cards of the year. Fight week, however, brought unexpected drama. Everything seemed normal until fans noticed something unusual. Sharp-eyed observers spotted what appeared to be a wound on Saint Denis' ankle. Within hours, speculation spread across social media that he might be dealing with another staph infection before one of the biggest fights of his career. The rumors quickly exploded online. Suddenly, everyone was asking the same question. Was Benoît Saint Denis walking into the biggest fight of the year at less than 100%? Panic spread almost instantly. For many fans, this felt like the worst possible scenario. Benoît Saint Denis had dealt with a staph infection before his co-main event against Dustin Poirier at UFC 299 in March 2024. At the time, the infection severely affected his weight cut. Even so, he refused to pull out of the fight. Once the bout began, Saint Denis struggled to absorb Poirier's power and was eventually knocked out. Because of that history, the rumors carried real weight. Everyone remembered what had happened before. BSD was forced to address the speculation publicly. Speaking with RMC Sport Combat, he shut the rumors down. "No, not at all. I don't have staph. Everything spread so quickly on social media. It's crazy. I did have a scab on my foot, yes, but it's not staph. That's all it was. These things happen." He also explained that his training camp had gone exactly as planned. Training camp was managed well. No fatigue either. Having more preparation time allowed us to control everything better. "I'm happy, I'm in great shape, and the weight cut is going perfectly." Then, full of confidence, he ended his media appearances with 4 simple words. "Ready to take on the English." Looking back now, those words feel unforgettable. Then came Paddy Pimblett. Throughout fight week, Paddy repeated the same prediction over and over again. At the time, some people dismissed it as typical pre-fight trash talk. Instead, it turned out to be one of the most accurate predictions seen in recent UFC history. Pimblett entered UFC 329 looking to bounce back after losing to Justin Gaethje in their interim lightweight title fight earlier that year. Before that defeat, Paddy had won 9 consecutive fights, including impressive stoppage victories over Michael Chandler and King Green. He desperately needed a statement win. More importantly, he believed he already knew exactly how the fight would unfold. Every interview sounded the same. Paddy insisted that Benoît Saint Denis would shoot for a takedown. He claimed BSD would expose his neck. And he promised everyone he was going to choke him unconscious. He even said he switches mentally the moment his opponent stands across from him inside the octagon. Before the fight, Pimblett confidently told fans they would witness a Frenchman getting completely dominated. Many experts still favored Saint Denis because of his explosive wrestling, relentless pressure, and suffocating top control. Everyone respected Paddy's grappling, but many questioned whether he could successfully apply it against a former French Special Forces operator. Paddy never doubted himself. Not even for a second. There was a reason for that confidence. Despite competing in fewer UFC fights, Pimblett had already accumulated 7 submission victories. Once a fight reached the ground, he became incredibly dangerous. He had already submitted fighters like King Green and Jordan Levitt with remarkable speed. On the mat, Paddy fights like a spider. Patient. Precise. Always waiting for one mistake. Heading into fight night, he genuinely believed he had identified a weakness in Saint Denis' game. As it turned out, he was absolutely right. The fight lasted just 52 seconds. Only 9 seconds after the opening bell, everything changed. Saint Denis threw a high kick before immediately shooting for a takedown. It was exactly the sequence Paddy had predicted all week. The high kick opened the hips. Then BSD dove toward the legs, a combination he had successfully used throughout his career. Only this time, Paddy was waiting. The moment Saint Denis entered, Pimblett wrapped up a guillotine before smoothly transitioning into a perfectly locked Darce choke. Saint Denis desperately tried to escape. He rolled. He turned. He searched for space. Every movement only tightened the choke. Paddy stayed attached the entire time. He locked his legs around BSD's body, settled into position, and eliminated every possible escape. There was nowhere left to go. Referee Mark Goddard lifted Saint Denis' arm. It dropped. He checked it again. There was no response. BSD never tapped. Instead, he went unconscious like a warrior, face first on the canvas, never choosing to quit. He simply went to sleep. In one of the biggest surprises of the night, Paddy Pimblett submitted Benoît Saint Denis with a Darce choke in under 1 minute. The finish immediately entered the history books. It became the second fastest Darce choke submission in UFC history, trailing only Kyle Daukaus' 50-second finish. An incredible achievement. Then came the celebration. As soon as the microphone reached Paddy, there was no holding him back. The spectacular finish earned him a $100,000 performance of the night bonus. And Paddy wasn't about to be humble. Looking directly into the camera, he smiled and declared, "Submission of the year. I knew he was out. My man was face down eating canvas." Then he reminded everyone exactly what he had been saying throughout fight week. Speaking with Joe Rogan, Paddy said, "I told everyone all week he was going to shoot in, and I was going to grab him. I'm going to grab him, and I'm going to choke him out. He was face down on the canvas. I'm like a spider, mate. Once I get hold of you, you're not getting out. Simple as that." Then Paddy shifted his focus to the rest of the lightweight division. He called out practically everyone. "I'll beat Ilia Topuria. I'll rematch Justin Gaethje. I'll fight Conor McGregor or Max Holloway next. I don't care. Give me anyone and I'll punch their head in." At the post-fight press conference, he made another bold statement. "As soon as I beat BSD, I'm right back in title contention," he told UFC.com. "I already had a good fight with the champion. People say it wasn't close, but I think I lost 3 rounds to 2. One judge even scored it 3-2, Southwest it was close. I beat Saint Denis, and now I want whoever is ranked above me." He added, "I came here to walk away with that belt. And I already know how tough I am." Think about what Paddy accomplished. He recorded the second fastest Darce choke submission in UFC history using a sequence he adjusted to in real time. That's either incredible instinct or absolute genius. Maybe it's both. UFC President Dana White was equally impressed. "What a nasty choke," White said. "It was an incredible performance, even though it ended so quickly." He gained a lot of respect after the Gaethje fight. "My social media team told me he picked up around 2 million followers after that loss. Then he came in tonight, and it honestly felt like he was already the world champion." Now comes the part everyone has been waiting for. Benoît Saint Denis woke up on July 12, 2026, facing the toughest moment of his professional career. For the first time, he had been submitted. For the first time, he had been put to sleep inside the octagon. And it happened on one of the biggest UFC stages ever, during the co-main event of one of the most watched cards in company history. The entire fight lasted less than 1 minute. Almost immediately, comparisons started appearing across the MMA world. Some compared it to Cyril Gaines's quick defeat against John Jones. Another elite French fighter. Another devastating loss. Another reminder of just how unforgiving mixed martial arts can be. But anyone familiar with Benoît Saint Denis knew one thing. He wasn't going to disappear. He wasn't going to stay silent. Before this fight, Saint Denis had already explained exactly who he is. "It's just the way I am. It's in my DNA. I'm a finisher, and I'll always be. When you're inside the octagon with me, you're here for a treatment." That mentality doesn't suddenly disappear because of one difficult night. The shocking part isn't simply that he lost. It's the position he now finds himself in. Earlier this year, Saint Denis was offered a fight against Michael Chandler at UFC Freedom 250 on June 14, 2026. He turned it down because he was recovering from an injury. Instead, he chose to focus entirely on preparing for Paddy Pimblett. He pushed all of his chips onto this opportunity. Now the result is painful. No title momentum. No victory. No reward. That's the real heartbreak. Not retirement. Not an emotional farewell. The reality is much simpler. The God of War now has to rebuild his path from the beginning. And he knows it. There is, however, one piece of encouraging news. Because Saint Denis was submitted rather than knocked unconscious by strikes or seriously injured, the medical outlook appears much more positive than many people expected. BSD fights from a southpaw stance. His style has always revolved around relentless wrestling, heavy pressure, and dangerous submissions. While he's willing to exchange strikes, his primary goal is usually forcing opponents toward the fence before imposing his grappling. Against Paddy, he absorbed very little significant damage. He entered healthy. He left physically healthy. Yes, he lost consciousness. But he didn't leave the cage with major cuts or a damaging knockout. That difference matters. Especially because of what's coming next. UFC Paris returns on Saturday, September 5, 2026, at the Accor Arena in Paris. That's less than 2 months away. Although the full fight card hasn't been officially announced, the UFC has already teased appearances from both Cyril Gane and Benoît Saint Denis. His name is already being linked to the biggest event of the year in his home country. 20,000 French fans would be waiting to welcome him back. Now the question becomes obvious. Does Saint Denis return that quickly? Does he immediately chase redemption in front of his hometown crowd? Or does he step back, study the mistakes from this fight, and return only after making the necessary adjustments? According to reports surrounding his camp, the dominant emotion isn't discouragement. It's frustration. The kind of frustration that motivates elite competitors. The kind that sends a fighter back into the gym the very next morning. This isn't the first setback of Benoît Saint Denis' career. He recovered after defeats to Dustin Poirier. He recovered after Renato Moicano. Every setback has been followed by another comeback. There's every reason to believe he'll try to do it again. The only remaining questions are when. And against whom. So what exactly went wrong? Let's be honest for a moment, because Benoît Saint Denis deserves a real analysis. Not excuses. Not sympathy. Just the truth. What happened wasn't completely unexpected. As painful as it is to admit, it was a vulnerability that had existed in his game for a long time. Paddy Pimblett's clearest path to victory was always going to be exploiting the biggest weakness in BSD's style, his willingness to attack aggressively while leaving himself exposed. Saint Denis constantly moves forward. He enters on straight lines. He accepts taking damage if it means forcing exchanges. That's always been part of who he is. It's his identity. It's the way he fights. Paddy knew exactly that. He had clearly studied every habit in Saint Denis' game. Right from the opening exchange, BSD threw a high kick to force Pimblett's guard upward before immediately changing levels for a takedown. It was a sequence he'd used successfully throughout his career. Only this time, Paddy was ready. He defended the kick, sprawled perfectly on the takedown, and immediately attacked the neck as Saint Denis dropped to his knees. Everything happened in one smooth sequence. The high kick. The level change. The sprawl. The choke. Looking back, it was a surprising tactical decision by Saint Denis. After all, Paddy Pimblett has built much of his career on submissions. In fact, he owns far more submission victories than knockout wins. That's the harsh reality. Many analysts identified the guillotine as one of the biggest dangers heading into this matchup. BSD had escaped similar submission attempts before. Other opponents had threatened him. None of them, however, possessed Paddy's ability to capitalize instantly. Pimblett didn't even need to finish the guillotine. He flowed effortlessly into the Darce choke, settled his position, locked his leg across Saint Denis' back, and ended the fight. The transition was almost flawless. Statistically, Saint Denis averages more than 4 takedowns every 15 minutes and thrives during grappling exchanges. But this time, he faced an opponent who matched his size, strength, and submission skills at lightweight. The last time Saint Denis encountered a powerful grappler with similar physical advantages, Renato Moicano controlled him from start to finish. This felt like history repeating itself. Different opponent. Same lesson. Now the lightweight division suddenly looks completely different. This victory didn't just affect Benoît Saint Denis. It reshaped the entire picture at 155 pounds. Overnight, Paddy Pimblett transformed from an entertaining contender into someone firmly in the title conversation. The victory marked his 10th win in his last 11 fights. Immediately after the event, fighters and fans across social media began debating who should face him next. Paddy made his intentions perfectly clear. He wants everyone. He mentioned Ilia Topuria, Justin Gaethje, Conor McGregor, Arman Tsarukyan, Charles Oliveira. Whoever stands between him and the championship. The challenge is that many of those fights aren't currently easy to make. Ilia Topuria reportedly suffered 2 fractured orbital bones during his 4th-round TKO loss to Justin Gaethje at UFC Freedom 250. Reports also indicated he broke his nose during that fight. While his team remains optimistic about his recovery, many expect Topuria to remain sidelined until later this year. Even Paddy acknowledged that possibility. He explained that fans constantly ask for the Topuria fight, but realistically, Ilia may not be ready before the end of the year. Paddy, meanwhile, wants another fight before then. For him, the mission hasn't changed. I want to become world champion. I want to be the best in the world. I truly believe that's my destiny. Whether it happens in my next fight or 10 fights from now, I'm going to become world champion. Those are bold words. But they're coming from a fighter who just submitted one of the most dangerous lightweights in the UFC in under a minute. So where does that leave Benoît Saint Denis? The reality is difficult. Before UFC 329, he was ranked number 5 in the world. He had won 4 straight fights. Every one of those victories ended with a finish. One difficult night changed everything. His ranking will likely fall. His title momentum has disappeared. Now he must begin climbing again. But statistics never tell the full story. They don't explain who Benoît Saint Denis really is. This is a man who left the French Special Forces to chase a UFC career. He gave himself just 2 years and lived entirely off his savings while pursuing that dream. Before stepping into the octagon, he served in Mali. He experienced real combat. Real danger. Real war. Compared to that, one defeat inside a cage is another obstacle to overcome. That's why it's almost impossible to imagine this loss breaking him. Everything we know about Saint Denis suggests the opposite. The most likely outcome is a return at UFC Paris on September 5 inside the Accor Arena. His name has already been linked to that event. Competing in front of 20,000 passionate French fans would be the perfect opportunity to begin his comeback. The atmosphere alone could help reignite his momentum. A redemption story. A warrior returning home. A chance to remind everyone why he became one of the division's most feared fighters. The opponent will likely come from the top 10. Someone ranked between 7th and 12th. A meaningful matchup that allows him to rebuild without rushing him straight back into another title eliminator. One thing seems certain. From now until September, Saint Denis will spend countless hours refining his submission defense and scramble awareness. That exact sequence against Paddy Pimblett will almost certainly be drilled over and over again. The God of War doesn't disappear after 52 seconds. He adapts. He improves. Then he returns to battle. Knowing Benoît Saint Denis, this defeat may eventually become the experience that transforms him into an even more dangerous fighter. That's the real story. No retirement. No excuses. No dramatic farewell. Just a warrior who got caught, accepted the result, and is already preparing for the next challenge. Now we want to hear from you. What shocked you more? The stunning 52-second submission itself? Or the difficult road Benoît Saint Denis now faces afterward? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to MMA Rivals, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next upload.